What's going on, everybody? I'm Kyle Werner, host of the Great Dad Life podcast, a community of parents and parents-to-be here to motivate and help you live a healthier, wealthier, and happier life. The topic of today's show has the potential to improve all three of those things and can drive better results for all organizations if managed properly. Companies across the globe have been forced to experiment with work from home, probably a little earlier than some wanted to due to the pandemic. Many companies have publicly stated that they will bring just a portion of their employees back to the office. Looks like this work arrangement is here to stay for a good portion of folks, and it may be a valuable option for parents looking for a little more flexibility. Our guest today, Gaby Ryan, professional, wife, and mother, has over 10 years of experience working 100% remote, and she started before it was the trendy thing to do. She's worked for managers that have done a great job of maintaining a high level of engagement and teamwork, and some that have fallen a little short. She has a list of lessons learned that will be extremely valuable in smoothing this transition for employees and employers alike. Gaby, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we dive into your story, can you give the audience a quick bio?
Yeah, so I started remote working about 10 years ago. I was about a year out of college, if I'm dating myself a little, and I just started working at a financial firm in the office. And then my husband got orders. He was in the military, got orders to be stationed in Texas, and I was living in Virginia at the time, and that work situation wasn't going to work very well. So I actually did resign from my position. But my boss gave me the option to go remote, which was probably the best thing that could have happened, because the entire time we were stationed, we were stateside. So I got to keep my job, even though we moved 3 times. And then I transitioned to a different company, still completely remote. It's worked out great in terms of moving for my husband's roles, different roles that he's had. It's worked out great for having our family. It's just been a real great way to, operate. And I think more people should do it now that everybody does it essentially
right.
Nowadays.
Yeah, some folks might not have the choice, right?
Yes.
Well, I feel like you stole my first question. I was going to ask you to take us back. So you already did that. Your husband's on active duty. He got orders. When you did start working remote, did anything surprise you, good or bad?
It was a transition for sure, because I did work in the office for about a year, which is the traditional way of working 10 years ago. But I was the only remote person on my team. So that was an adjustment for me and also for my manager, because it was the first time she was managing a remote employee, which is a transition for everybody. But you just really needed to sort of be an advocate for yourself, make sure you're not forgotten about. Out of sight, out of mind can easily happen, but you just got to make sure that you don't fall into that bucket. The adjustment of really being home all the time, that was a change. You don't have your leave the house, go grab a cup of coffee, drive to work situation anymore. So you're home all the time. So you do need to find other ways to sort of get out of house. So, it was an adjustment, but now it's just, for me, second nature. So I'm so used to it.
Right. And over the past 10 years, I guess you've put together an informal list of kind of lessons learned. And that's actually the reason that, I wanted to touch base with you. I was talking to your husband, Galen. We work together, for anyone in the audience who isn't familiar. And he had mentioned that he actually used your list of lessons learned when the COVID situation hit, and it made for a really smooth transition. So I thought there'd be a ton of value for you to share with other folks, and let them learn from those lessons.
Absolutely. I'd say one of the biggest things would be to start your day like you are going to an office. So not just sort of rolling out of bed 5 minutes before you're supposed to log on and jump right into your day. I still get up every morning, get a shower, get dressed, even if it is just in shorts and a t-shirt. It's not pajamas. You're still starting your day, have your coffee, watch the news, whatever it is. So you sort of prepare for the day more than just rolling out of bed and showing up. So that was one big thing for me, which I've always done. What else? I'd say also, I touched base a little bit before, but, always be an advocate for yourself. So if right now everybody essentially is remote, so everyone's sort of in the same pool, but if you're doing it like I was, where I was the only person on my team who was remote, making sure that you're not forgotten. I mean, I've had managers who got halfway through a meeting and then realized, oh no, I forgot to call Gaby and dial in. So, always make sure that you're still present, even if you're not in the office. Also having like a separate workspace is ideal. I know not everyone has that luxury right now. Sometimes you got to work off your dining table or sitting on your couch just because that's what you have. But I've always made it a point in our first house. My office was also our guest room. Now since I solely work from home, I've always made sure that we have a separate office space just for me. So where you can go to work, shut out everything else. And when your day is done, close it off. You've essentially left the office, and you can separate those two things, because if it's all in one bubble, essentially, you can never really shut off, and you need to be able to still shut your day off, transition from your work day to your family time and that kind of thing. So those were some really important, I thought, lessons that I've, learned along the way and have implemented in my previous company and my current role.
Yeah, I think the boundaries issue is something that a lot of folks can relate to right now. Like you said, you can work anywhere and you can work as late as you want, emails on your phone. Sometimes if you don't draw those boundaries, it's really difficult.
Right. You can't go 24/7. That's just unrealistic. So you do need to sort of break it off and say, nope, all right. It's for me, my day ends at 4:30. Typically, sometimes I work later, but my normal day ends at 4:30, and that after 4:30, it's time to spend with our son, spend with my husband, that kind of thing.
Was it difficult drawing those boundaries initially as far as your cutoff time, or were people pretty respectful that you worked with right off the bat?
I'd say I've had pretty respectful situations. There are, on occasion, it's, oh, can you stay a little later and do this? Or, oh, can you do this one more thing? But generally, it's been pretty easy for me to say, all right, it's at the end of my day. I'll deal with it when I log on in the morning, kind of thing.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, can you take us through kind of how this was beneficial for you and some of the benefits that other people that are considering this work arrangement might find in it?
Yeah, one benefit was actually being 100% remote. I was able to get a role in the company that I currently work with. They hired me as a remote employee, knowing that I had done that previously. So they knew they were going to get an employee who didn't have a hard time transitioning to that, because, someone right out the gate saying, oh, well, I'll jump into a remote role. If you've never done it, it could be a little tricky. It could be a transition. But you get someone I'd been doing it for 5 years at that point. So they said, okay, I went to the office for 2 weeks for training, and that's the last time I was there. It certainly helped me advance my career, having done it for a while. Once you get it under your belt a bit. I don't know.
What about time with Declan?
That's really been awesome. Our son's 1.5 years old now, and he is home with me all day. Luckily, my mom lives in the same town as us, so she comes over and watches them all day. So I still get my Declan time with him. I take my lunch when he has lunch, so I can feed him lunch and everything and still spend some time with him. And, if work's getting especially crazy, I can pop off for 10 minutes and go have a baby break, and it makes things a little better.
Always.
Oh yeah, a 1.5-year-old smiling and watching Nemo and Dory, which are our current favorites. So it's a good break for 10 minutes,
Yeah, it's Coco and Frozen in my house currently. So
oh yes, Coco is definitely a favorite.
Yeah. What about the commute? I think that's a huge advantage for folks that are used to going into the office every day. I mean, commute might be 30 minutes each way, so that's another hour, right? That you can spend doing any number of things.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely, saves you on gas mileage.
Yeah.
But, it is that extra time to spend with him, or, a little extra time to prep dinner. That way, you're not jumping off of work, hanging out with the baby for 2 seconds, then jumping into like your nighttime routine.
Mm-hmm.
I still get like an hour to hang out with him as soon as I get off work before I start doing nighttime stuff, making dinner, getting his bath, all that kind of stuff. So it's more quality time with him than just, okay, work is done.
Yep.
Now it's, time to get ready for bed.
Yep. No, absolutely. Well, and thinking about some of the benefits too is you can live anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to worry about your job following you or whatnot. I mean, that's got to be a huge benefit.
It is. When Galen took his new role down here in Georgia, where we currently are, it was a seamless transition for me because I took 4 days off of work, which is, essentially just time to drive down here and be here when the movers brought our stuff. And I still kept my job. It was, no consequence. I told my boss, hey, I'm moving across the country. I need these days off. All right, I'll talk to you on Monday.
Right.
Granted, the workspace was a little disheveled for a bit, but you unpack on the weekends and you do that. And like I said, especially when he was in the military and we would get orders for somewhere new, it was never a challenge of I got to leave my job and find a new job for a year or two wherever we're going to be stationed and leave that again. I've always been able to have a job, which has been awesome, because I don't really know if I'd be able to just not work.
Yeah.
So it's really been the ability to take your job anywhere in the country has really been awesome.
Yeah, phenomenal. So we've touched on a lot of the benefits to you or somebody that's looking at that option. What are some of the benefits for your employer?
I'd say the biggest one is having a huge pool of employees to pull from. So you're not just getting the people who live local to your town, who might be maybe 30 people who are qualified for the position. Now you can recruit all over the country and have your pool of 500 people who are qualified for the position. And you're not to say that other companies are settling, but you have a better chance of getting the person that's right for that position when you can offer that position to someone who lives halfway across the country.
Yeah.
And I still sometimes you need to make adjustments like that, but if it's something that you're dedicated to doing, that's sort of a small adjustment to having the right role and having the right person in the right role.
Right. It's a trade-off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, what about, there seems to be a lot of talk in the news right now about less of a need for office space even and reducing costs that way as well.
Right. Yeah. Employers do get rid of that overhead of having campuses or even just a building in a downtown city, which rent or mortgages for things like that are skyrocketing.
Mm-hmm.
So now where you have everyone just working from home and your overhead is essentially people's laptops and external monitors,
mm-hmm.
That certainly saves on the pocketbook, which I think most companies want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the biggest risk or concern that I've heard when I hear, folks talking on the news is around engagement. right? They're afraid that employees that are working from home are not going to be engaged. They're going to be watching movies or doing whatever they're doing. What's your answer to that? Do you feel like you're actually more productive working remote?
I do. I mean, I think you do need to have the right employees who are going to be dedicated, and there's always going to be people who are going to slack off and, go do the laundry and go sit and watch TV. And employers will notice that. I mean, they'll see that in your productivity or your numbers or, whatever it is that you do. They're going to realize that you're not putting out the numbers that somebody else is. And I would imagine most employers would have consequences for that.
Right.
So, if you want to keep your job, you should probably do it properly and, do what you say you're doing and stuff. But I think the vast majority of people would benefit from it. I mean, you do get, like you said, you do get more family time, you cut down on the commute time, stuff like that. And so it's sort of a win-win for both parties as long as everyone's doing what they need to.
Right. Which methods have you seen throughout your last 10 years that have really worked as far as keeping your engagement up with your team and driving that productivity?
I would say in terms of like team engagement, like I said, making sure you're never forgotten. Even just, I know it's silly, but just like getting a little something in the mail sometimes to realize that, you're not forgotten about. I mean, my company sent us a little garden to grow the other day just to, it's a little herb garden that I'm sure did not cost very much, but it was just sort of the sentiment of, they care enough to make a little gesture like that.
Yeah, who doesn't like getting mail?
Right? I mean, everybody loves a silly piece of mail as long as it's not a bill.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, stuff like that, or even when you're having team meetings now that everyone's home and you do it with your videos on so you can still sort of feel connected to people that, you don't see all the time, or having like, I know departments of my company have had like virtual happy hours or, stuff like that, where it's, you just get together and it doesn't have to be just about work, but just to sort of feel connected a little.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. It sounds like if you can schedule things outside of work hours as well that are just fun, where you get to know people, those relationships are going to take themselves into the workplace as well and drive better working relationships.
Absolutely. I mean, getting to know, like, know about your workers' families and stuff. How many kids do you have? Like, what are your kids up to? What kind of dogs do you have? Just silly stuff like that. It makes anybody feel more connected to somebody. And it's, going to be a more pleasant work day when you enjoy the people you're working with and you know the people you're working with. And it's not just sort of a name that pops up on your screen every once in a while for an instant message or an email.
Right. So are daily touch points, weekly touch points beneficial? I mean, is there any cadence that works better than another that you've seen?
I wouldn't say you need to have like in-person or virtual meetings every day, because nobody has time for that really. Sure. With the way the workforce is. I mean, there's always stuff going on that, maybe doing that once a week or every other week at least, so you get that face-to-face interaction. But certainly talking to people online. I mean, we've had like group chats and stuff where you can essentially just talk to everybody on your team throughout the day. So you don't feel like, oh, well, I have to wait till so-and-so showing back online if you have a question about something, or, you can shoot it in there and someone will have the answer, and, you're talking to someone and it's almost like you're popping your head over a cubicle or out your office door.
Right. Well, it sounds like building trust and setting good expectations, checking in regularly, are all really key to being successful here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, do you have any other tips that we haven't talked about that you'd like to share with folks, either considering this route or companies that, are getting into this area over the next couple of months here?
No, I mean, I'd say just as the employee, advocate for yourself, know that, if your team is not completely remote, don't let yourself be forgotten, just because out of sight, out of mind, but also don't, it goes both ways. So don't out of sight, out of mind your computer while you're working. You need to stick to it, and it'll reward you eventually, promotions, raises, that kind of stuff. They see it, even like your manager will see that, even if you're not sitting across from them. They know what you're doing all day. So you can't just sort of slack off because you're at home. You still got to stay dedicated to it. But I mean, in terms of family life, it's pretty awesome. So it's, you got to balance it, but I think the good outweigh the bad for sure.
Right. Well, one thing I thought about too when you were talking through that is there's a cost to commuting, not just with time, but with dollars, right? Mm-hmm. I think the government rate this year is 57.5 cents per mile, right? So that's supposed to cover gas and maintenance and wear and tear on your car.
Right.
So given two options, for base pay, even if one is a little lower on the work from home side, you might actually be net positive if you cut that commute out as well. So there's another benefit to it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think since March, since I work from home, I think I filled my car up like 2 or 3 times. My weekly trip to the grocery store and stuff. But, I mean, even before this pandemic, you save on stuff like that. I mean, which has a higher trade-in value when you want to trade in that car for something new.
Yeah. And I'm from Chicago, right? So avoiding rush hour traffic would be a huge benefit.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Who wants to sit in that? I mean, that's not a good way to start your day.
or end it, right?
Or end it. Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for your time. If anyone wants to get a hold of you, what would be the best way to do it?
Yeah, they could shoot me an email at gaby.s.ryan@gmail.com, and I would be happy to answer any questions or give any recommendations, anything like that.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Gaby.
Absolutely. Have a great night.
You too.